Hey, welcome to Restrocast. Today, I'm with Naeem Madad, founder of Gates Hospitality, founding member at Dubai Restaurant Group, which now is UAE Restaurant Group, and somebody who spans an experience not only which is rich in number of years, but extremely rich in number of geographies that he worked in and delivered. I enjoyed my conversation with Naeem because what I saw was that how Naeem, across his career, picked up so many right things, so many good relationships, including some of the languages as wild as Japanese, to only make sure that he's able to deliver the right quality in his work while in Japan. And this is just one, part of it. I think as an entrepreneur, I saw what Naeem did and what has been doing is extremely fulfilling and enriching for him. But I love the fact that he's able to create so much to learn. I came out of this conversation extremely enriched. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it as well. Watch. Naeem, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for agreeing to, be on the chat.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm always excited to tell my story for multiple reasons. Reason one is I hope to be an inspiration to a lot of industry colleagues. That's one. And two, and I genuinely believe my storyline is very unique, and you will hear a lot more as we go along.
Awesome. So let's, why not start with that? I want to know, if you can make like a small intro about what you do today, and or maybe why not we jump into, from where it all started?
Sure. So where it started, I think is very interesting, actually. As a matter of fact, I was in my second year of economics. I was in the theatre at Flinders University. This is not a word of a lie. I got up. So I had 12 months left, exactly 12 months. I packed up and I left, and I said to myself, I love politics, but I don't want to be a politician. Big statement. Politics is still within me. I follow politics. I follow what happens globally and so forth, but I'm not a politician. And the reason that I say that is I can't help myself but to say it the way it is. And that's not a politician. Packed up, left, went home, not a word of a lie again. My mother didn't speak to me for about a month. She fed me every day, but she didn't speak to me because she thought I was making the wrong decision.
That's how the mothers
intuition.
Do it.
Saying all of this, the family or my uncle had a chain of restaurants. This is all back in Adelaide. And I was working in those restaurants typically on a Tuesday night, Friday and Saturday nights. I was helping the family, but I genuinely thought that the hospitality industry is not for me. It's not what I wanted to do. It's demanding. It's really over the top. Whenever my friends are out partying, I'm working on the weekends, Christmas, New Year's, all of that. I was literally having to work for the family. And sure enough, the family, as being a family member, when someone doesn't turn up to work, the easiest phone call to make was, Naeem, can you come in for a couple of hours? And sure enough, we did. So my mother, much to my mother's surprise, she was also surprised that I said I would like to go back to Cordon Bleu and finish my hotel school, which I did. In the meantime, I landed my first job in the Hilton Hotel, which was literally across one of our venues in Adelaide. And I started the hotel career. I was in front office.
This is back in which year?
This is back, you want to give my age away, don't you? I know exactly where you're going with this. This is back in 92. Going back in years, yes. So again, working, studying, hotel world was extremely exciting for me. And that's when I realized from that particular role that I had in life that hotel world is really where I'd like to be spending my career. For multiple reasons. One is, if you take the industry, it really encompasses lifestyle. It encompasses food, it encompasses luxury, travel. So it's really one of those industries that talks about multiple facets rather than a daily routine. And that's why I jumped into that. I did dive deep into the industry.
But what changed between, not willing to continue, your hotel education and then partly hating the fact or recognizing that, as a restaurateur or if you're working in the restaurant, you actually are supposed to help people party, and that's why you can't party. And you may not have a social life if you are going to be in the restaurant space. 2, going back to the school and loving and going all in. Like, what changed?
Many things. Again, family business is family business. So at the end of the day, whilst you are accountable, you're still family. So even the way your colleagues treat you at work, you're family. Maturity also had changed. And last but not least, restaurant is one of the sectors of hospitality. It's not the hospitality. It's one of the silos. And I was truly focusing on the entire business spectrum rather than a silo in the business. So if you analyze the differences of all of the silos and you look at the wide spectrum of what a hospitality, what a hotel career entails, then it's a different framework rather than food preparation, procurement, service of a meal period and so forth. So a lot had changed in that time. And also the industry offering, the consumer behavior had also changed in the meantime as well. There was a shift in behavior. Eating out became part of the week. People ate out a lot more because it was affordable, and it was.
You're talking about back in the day, like when you
absolutely
when
I'm starting. Yes,
yeah, awesome.
So I saw a massive shift in the industry, and that I guess it helped me say to myself, really, that's really what I'd like to do. Hotelier is really what I'd like to become, and I drove that hard. From Adelaide, without going to a lot of details, from Adelaide, I moved up north, Queensland, and I was fortunate enough to work with a company called Hayman Island Resort. It's a very luxurious resort up north. Used to be owned by Ansett Airlines, one of the local airlines in Australia. And really every celebrity that would come to Australia, every celebrity within Australia would stay in the resort. And again, that took me to the next level of excitement of the industry, of hotel living and the way that we conduct business. Away from home for the first time as well. So it really changed my take on life in general. And
what were you taking care of there?
So when I joined, I was focusing on food and beverage as well. Again, back to my roots. It's always been food and beverage. When I started, as I mentioned earlier, I was front office, did a lot of sales and marketing, also in between that, and finance. And I felt the true impact of customer service is food and beverage. Because really, if you think about it, once you check in into a hotel room, the engagement, the encounter that you have with the person behind the counter is literally a matter of minutes. They give you your keys and then you're on your own. Whereas the food and beverage service, the experience, be it breakfast, be it lunch, be it dinner, be it room service, or whatever it may be, there's a longer period. And believe it or not, the service encounters can shape your stay, positive or negative. Whereas anything else within a hotel, hygiene, yes, you can call someone, they will clean your room, housekeeping, engineering, finance. But the biggest impact, the biggest chapter of fulfillment, if done well, that is the food and beverage. So Hayman, from Hayman, I came back to the mainland and I was working with Conrad. That's where my Conrad 11 years started. Again, Conrad, food and beverage, started with one unit, and then by the time I left 4 years later, I was assistant F&B director. So again, grew fairly rapid at a very young age. Traveled quite extensively in the meantime as well, and being part of a hotel world, you get a lot of perks when you travel with the hotels. You get preferred rates and so forth, which encourages you to see the globe. And I took advantage of that to enhance my knowledge. In the meantime, I was doing my master's at Oxford as well. So I kept my educational level moving forward and kept my...
How did that work, right? Like,
believe it or not, it was actually Conrad who put me forward. They saw the potential, and they chose out of, I think at the time, 1,200 employees, they chose 4 of us. And I was fortunate enough to be put forward for that. And I did. And I specialized in TQM, Total Quality Management. Again, all about service component. And I majored in a lifetime employment because I wanted to see the difference that the globe has, because I had a lot of interest in Japan as a country and their work ethic.
Yeah.
So I majored in that, and I thought, let me see how does TQM and lifetime employment, how do they go, and where is it all going? And
what do you mean by lifetime employment?
Typical Japanese person would have one job in their life.
Wow.
One job. So they join a bank and they retire from the same bank.
Wow.
That has changed, obviously with generations, but typically, and until the 1990s, what they call themselves as a salary man has one job in their entire career.
No, I love when you said work ethic. I think, as at Posist, I think one of my, business bucket list is to actually, do something in Japan, because, the way I look at that market also is that, they love quality. The loyalty amongst your vendors, amongst your customer base is absolutely,
Wait, I'm about to tell you more. So I was fortunate enough from Queensland, the Gold Coast, 4 and a bit years, Conrad Jupiters. I was fortunate enough to land a job in Japan based on my interest in the country.
Wow.
I was in Bali. Very randomly, I met an individual that we're talking, and he was actually a Japanese chef who's about to open the Sheraton Grand in Yokohama, which is a secondary city, but fairly large. And we stayed in touch over the years. And one fine day, I got an email from him saying, look, we have an opening. Would you be interested to come and do the opening with us? Now, Grand Sheraton in Yokohama at the time was a phenomenal opening, really luxurious property. I went in as the F&B director. Now, my entire team would have been double my age, which is extremely difficult because, again, I'm entering a new country. I'm entering a new culture, and a very specific culture, if I may say, at a very young age. So all the spotlights were on me to see why has this individual been selected, chosen to lead this opening. It was an amazing experience in Japan. And back to your point about quality and interest, I think what Japan has embedded in me is not only quality, but appreciation for life, appreciation for nature, appreciation for humankind, and equally as important, understanding of what's behind the surface. They really like to dig deep. So to give you an example, we would start our Christmas planning in June. June, we would start our Christmas planning, right?
Wow.
6 months out. So the planning process for any event, for any activity is very lengthy and very detailed in order to make sure that they cover every single step.
Wow, in June, right? June. So you really
6 months out.
You really are embodying the Japanese documentation and planning, huh?
It's very, very rewarding because you're not pressed for time. And you're planning correctly based on the event and what the event deserves and what the event should deliver. So you have sufficient time to explore every option out there and make sure you come up with the best option for the business model that you see.
I have a question on this, and this really bugs me at times, and especially running a tech company, at times with your aspirations, right? You want to figure out like how companies are probably planning meticulous moves 3 years out. My question is that does it kill agility, right? For example, you said you're planning Christmas in June. That's 6-7 months out. How do you remain agile where, probably in October you discover something which is brilliant and you're like, oh, wow, we should actually do this, not what we planned. Does it happen to you, or does it kill serendipity and agility fully?
Look, in today's world, it would kill. It is an obstacle. But back in the day, if you weren't doing what we did, you weren't perceived, you weren't taken as a serious individual because technology wasn't part of our life. So the world has shifted drastically, dramatically. We have, so agility today is, we see it as a short, fast, nimble, right? Agility in the past was planning and having plan A, plan B, plan C in place. So to answer your question, I think today, and I'm sure the Japanese mindset, the Japanese business model has shifted also based on technology and based on the services and the technologies that we have at our fingertips. But back in the day, that was it.
No, but when you said that for your own, do you mean that you used to plan Christmas in June, or
yes,
did you mean that you do that right now?
We used to.
Used to.
Used to.
All right. Oh, I thought that you were saying that even today you kind of...
Nowadays, everything that we would plan would become obsolete if we did start in June.
Absolutely. That's. I mean, I thought that you were saying that even today in your company you plan Christmas in June.
No. Look, what has become very obvious for me is that planning is essential. And planning doesn't mean you have to go from 1 to 10 every time.
Sure.
As long as you plant the seed, and as long as you have that plan marked somewhere in your calendar, in your mind, in your to-do list, then it's okay.
Also phase-wise, like for example, I am like an iterative guy, right? So I look at everything in like phases, right? So if I need to plan something, I'll immediately chop it down in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It helps me think, helps me, not have the FOMO, against agility. I mean, I would like to, remain that agile, that in case at last moment we feel that we can do something better, let's take a shot, but let's make this better, like only for better, not because of lack of planning. I mean, if something has no variables, then of course, plan it as early as possible. But if there are variables, why not?
Sure. Look, just us having this conversation, it makes me realize how much we as humans in our lifetime have had to adhere to change. And I think the next generation will not have that. And I think previous generations, never had that because there was a lot of stability. Whereas our life today, there is very little stability in everything we do, in the way we behave, we conduct ourselves. If we're not fast and leading the pack, we get left behind.
Yeah, people born between 70s and 90s are the ones who are continuously struggling.
Yes, we're trying to adjust. And really, if you take technology specifically, again, I have 2 children today, right? And the way they handle technology, the way they deal with technology is a lot faster than I will ever be able to grasp it. It's a lot more natural. Whereas me, sometimes I'm thinking, should I not? What if? So I think our generation had to face that shift.
I think their speed also is about they're more intuitive about it. I think the speed comes from not the skill or adaptability. I think the speed comes from that they're intuitive about it. They were like born on it. So for them, like the right swipe, left swipe, is the normal thing. If it doesn't work like that,
I agree.
right?
I fully agree.
Yeah. So it's a muscle memory. They're born with the muscle memory of how to interact with these devices or the apps.
It's part of their existence, 100%. Whereas we had to learn it halfway through our lives. And
absolutely. So Japan, right? So how many years did you work there?
So I did 2 years with the Sheraton, and then I went back to Hilton, Conrad Hilton. Came back to the UAE for the first time, actually. Did the opening of Hilton Jumeirah.
That was year?
99.
99.
99. I was here for the millennium. That's how I remember. So came back, and again, back to comfort. Conrad was really where I learned the industry, where I entered. So it was very comfortable. The Middle East as a region was new to me. However, it was a lot less hard to adjust to than Japan. It was very active market at the time. It was up and coming city. There was a lot of cranes. There was a lot of development. There was a lot of aspirations in the marketplace. Opened the Hilton. Also got a transfer to Saudi, which was my first entry to Saudi with the Waldorf Astoria and the Hilton in Saudi, in Jeddah, the city of Jeddah. Again, another amazing experience. 2 years in Saudi, I was asked if I'd like to go back to Japan with Conrad Hilton, and definitely my hands, I had them up both at the same time for a long period, so nobody missed my interest. And I was back in Tokyo City, and my hotel at the time had 800 rooms.
Wow.
So Hilton Shinjuku was one of the largest hotels, and we did... So I started as operations director, so I was number 2, but there was no GM at the time in the hotel. So I was reporting directly to the VP Ops, who didn't actually sit in the hotel. So I was running the hotel at a very young age. And again, going back to my earlier point of my F&B director would have been the age of my father. Everybody else would have been 10, 20, 30 years older than me at the time. Yeah. And that was really pushing every single... ambition in my body. In every bone in my body was really pushed to the maximum limit in order to make a success of this building, to make a success of this business, because this was going to shape my entry to that difficult market. Flagship property, like I said, 800 rooms. We used to do 1 million F&B covers per annum. On a Saturday, we'll have
1 million F&B covers per
year.
Per year. Wow.
It's a massive business. It was really an incredible business. And to be trusted with that responsibility in a foreign country, I took up Japanese, speak it, because I thought it's unlike here. You're dealing with 85, 90% Japanese. Every meeting I went, I had my PA who was translating to me. And whilst she did an amazing job, I always wondered in the back of my mind, am I missing the punchline?
Yeah.
Is she being too soft? Is she being too... is she shaping the discussion in a way that I'm not wanting to go through?
But
So
what's lost in translation?
Absolutely. So hence I started taking classes, and proudly, before leaving Japan, another 2 years, I would have been a 6.5 out of 10 speaking, not reading and writing, but speaking, which for me gained me a lot of respect with the team. I think they knew that I was serious about being there. They knew I was serious about comprehending what's happening around the place. A simple example, in Japan, they celebrate the cherry blossom, right?
Yeah.
So, and it tells you how serious they take life and how differently they view life. We walk under the trees, in Australia when they're blossoming, and yes, every now and then you may look up and say, "Great, looks good. I'll take a picture." Whereas back in Japan, they'll have a picnic under those trees and they'll celebrate, and that's a fundamental of appreciations of life. And that for me has really embedded a very strong. Powerful, strong, and very emotional part in my life that don't take things for granted. The way they celebrate Mount Fuji, the way they celebrate all of simple stuff that, again, elsewhere in the world, we take them for granted, has given me that edge of, yes, let's enjoy, but let's also be respectful and protect for generations to come. So, when we talk about sustainability and traceability and the likes, these are... you don't learn them overnight. You grow up with them. They are part of our culture. They're part of your daily behavior. And if they are part of your daily behavior, we don't have a problem in the world because everything is well treated. You don't abuse.
Absolutely.
You don't need a car. As humans, not every one of us, not every household needs 4 cars, 3 cars. There's public transport. That's okay. And the way the system has been built is to service that economy, to service that mindset, to service the culture in a way that everybody wins.
I think respecting nature and respecting, such things which are happening to you or given to you with like no effort of yours, they also help develop empathy. And that's probably what you're pointing towards as well, right? Empathy towards others.
So it's empathy, but at a very deep level. It's not empathy because you're feeling sorry for someone. It's empathy at an appreciation level,
correct.
Which I think for me is, you can't teach that. You have to be born with that, and you have to be nurtured that as you develop as a human in order to appreciate it. And the way they celebrate food is incredible. It's for me, it's look, my 4.5 years in Japan, I genuinely believe, have made me a better person.
Brilliant. And that actually gives me some aspirations and pushes me, to kind of look forward to
more of a reason for you to be on a plane ASAP. Absolutely.
Got it. And what after that?
After Japan, I came back to the UAE, again with Hilton. Kept kind of rotating around Hilton. The network that I've built within the senior leadership of Hilton, I kept coming back. So I moved from Hilton Tokyo back into the UAE. And from the UAE, I was given my first hotel in a secondary city in the UAE, which I've said no to. Coming out of Japan, I thought, I'm not going from a very sexy city into a secondary city. And that's when I left the company. I was working with the ruling Saudi family for a while in Saudi, one of their private assets, which again, another experience that is very rich, very luxurious, but in a very different shape and way and form, that gave me a different perspective on life. Only did 12 months.
What was that like? Would you like to speak about that?
Look, again, it was looking after one of the assets that was bleeding badly. Bleeding in the sense that it was operating as a hobby rather than a business. My objective was to make sure the business breaks even within 12 months, and I did that. And it was no magical approaches that I took. It was just fundamentally analyzing the business, analyzing the P&L, dissecting every entry that goes into that, and making sure that whatever is being booked into that business model belongs to that business. There was people on the payroll that haven't been working for years, that haven't been working that business for years, and to the knowledge of the ownership, but it was always booked into that business. So my argument was, no problems. You want to pay them. I respect that. I appreciate that. But that should be booked into another business model, so it's not impacting this particular business from a performance point of view. From there,
but was this your first, business or like brush with the business, or managing or running the P&L, like turning around a business?
Definitely not. Japan is all about performance. I mean, Japan for me was really moving from operations into a financial mindset. Japan, we have a best price policy in the rooms, that our pricing strategy changes literally by the minute, by the hour.
Wow. How?
Again, technology was very advanced in those days, booking. So people in Japan, and until recently, 4G, 3G, 5G wasn't actually available in Japan until recently. And I'm talking about 8 years, maybe maximum, since that became, Japan, you landed in Japan, you had to buy a Japanese Docomo phone, right, to be online. So they had a lot of these search engines on their own systems. And we were very well connected. And people would, because they're missing the train, just because you miss the train, you have to get a hotel room, because the next train is, so we had to be very agile. So at 11:30 in the evening, our price was 1 point, but we knew at 10 to 12, if you're not catching the train, you're in a fix. You needed a room.
Oh, wow. So this was demand supply, like real time.
By the minute. And we had best rate guaranteed as well. So we had to make sure that we don't compete with our tour operators, travel agents. It's fairly tricky. So to answer your question, the real financial understanding depth, the P&L ownership was from a very young age. But luckily, I'm good with numbers. I can easily dissect numbers fast, and I like numbers. And again, don't forget. Politics, in 2 years in uni politics, a lot of it is actually understanding businesses, understanding mindset, understanding the way you handle businesses as well. So I was fortunate in that sense.
Brilliant, right? So
12 months in Saudi, and again, I was saying to myself, what's next? Where is life? Saudi was Saudi at the time. Saudi was a very closed market. 99.9% of my business was dealing with Saudis in Saudi, and really looking after the family rather than looking after a business, other than my commercial accountability. So I was lucky enough, I received a phone call from my colleagues in Six Senses, and they said there was a Middle East general manager role for the region, if I would be interested. Long story short, after a few interviews too many for my liking, but anyway, I was appointed, and group GM for the Middle East. Six Senses. Now again, by doing all of this, my career kept moving in the right circles, if you ask me at least, meaning the luxury component stayed there. The international exposure stayed there. The brand positioning also stayed there. And last but not least for me, whilst I was growing in my career, I was growing in a way that is stable and efficient. So I wasn't moving from a GM into an MD. Now I moved from GM into group GM. And every step that I took was calculated in order to make sure that I don't tumble. I make sure that I enter an organization that I respect, and vice versa.
That's a big one, Naim. I think
look, it's
very few people can say what you just said, and that's commendable. I mean,
thank you. Look, it's again, not a lot of it is. I'm not going to take credit. A lot of it came to me, and it happened. But a lot of people read situations. A lot of people misreading situations, and I was fortunate enough to be able to read the situation, and I was in no rush. As I was very confident. So look, joining Six Senses for me wasn't a light decision, but also I did my own. I always have my tables of pros and cons and where I am in life without really speaking about them aloud, but it's all here. And what I've been able to do is I looked at my career and I looked at my experiences in life, and Asia Pacific, done. Middle East, done. Japan, done. So I'm thinking there aren't many professionals in my career that have been able to see all of these countries, operate in these countries at a level of luxury that I've been able to see and be part of and lead. And last but not least, from a fundamental commercial, sustainable, and changing hospitality. Hence, I decided to join Six Senses. Six Senses for me as a brand was there was a bit of a risk for me to jump, from a institution of Conrad Hilton, decades of presence leading the market, into a brand that's entering the market. But I thought, no, it's right for two reasons, and these two reasons are still fundamental in my life today. One is the whole changing the experience. Because no matter who you are today in the world, no matter how well off you are, if you live in the middle of London, if you live in the middle of New York, Sydney, wherever you live, there's always two constraints. Space, no matter where you are, you have space limitations. Two is you long for experiences that we can't actually have access to unless we are on holiday. And these, for me, stood out in the Six Senses ethos, mentalities, fundamentals. So the first opening we did, Six Senses Ziggy Bay, which is in Oman. Literally, the main feeder market for Six Senses Ziggy Bay is the UAE, because it's only 2 hours via road, whereas it's 4.5 hours from Muscat City. But the location is great. 84 pool villas, entry level is 80 square meters, and every one of those villas has a private pool. So principally what you're doing, you moved from the hotel thinking of a room into a villa.
Yeah.
You moved from 35 square meters into 80 square meters. You moved into a private swimming pool. You moved into a butler service. You moved into experiences management. You moved into an outdoor shower. And that for me was a shift.
Yeah, there was a full orbital shift. Like it's not incremental.
100%. And it wasn't a shift in my career. It was a shift in behavior. It was a shift in market demand and consumer demand, which luckily for me, I was there at the right time with the right organization in order to say, that's what we do. We opened Six Senses Ziggy Bay in 2008. 2008. Again, it's an incredible location. The position of the resort, it's 1.7 kilometers on beachfront. It's literally nestled behind the Hajar Mountains. So in order to access the resort, we needed to cut the road over the mountain, which took us a year and a bit itself, just cutting the road up. And the whole paragliding arrival experience, water experience arrival, all by road, gave us a story from day one that the media was, what's this resort? Where are they going? What are their endeavors from day one? And here we are, 13 years later, 14 years later, the resort is still the darling of media. It does extremely well, and it talks about those experiences that people long for in their travel. It talks about grounded experiences, meaning no matter what the brand is, if the brand is born in Asia, in the US, in Australia, that's not the issue. The issue is it delivers local experiences, and that's what we've excelled at doing. Because I think today's travelers, really what they're looking for is, if I'm traveling to Japan, I want the Japanese experience.
Yeah.
I want Japanese food. I want to mix and mingle with Japanese individuals in order to get a first-hand feel of what the culture is about.
Yeah.
What the country offers. And that's what we've excelled at doing in Oman, and continue on excelling on delivering.
I think Airbnb built a full business on that.
Look, 100%. 100%.
I mean, I believe that, while world believes and believed that Airbnb was about people letting a part of their house out and people trying to find a cheap accommodation, I don't think so. I think they always have been like competitive rates to hotels. I think Airbnb experiences are really about, being able to live in a residential area in that city amongst, the natives of the city. You actually start feeling exactly how the neighborhoods feel like. I mean, at least for me, Airbnb experiences have been largely about that, because then you can choose the neighborhood. You can actually, have a normal, real native experience in your surroundings, in your
Agreed. It started as a rate entry to the market.
Yeah.
But I think as it evolved, as that particular segment of the market evolved, now they've, like us in hotels, we're trying to say what's the next trend. And the trend is about that neighborhood experience. It's, I don't want to be in a high rise in the city with the concierge service. I want to turn up to a driveway, have a real key in my hand, open the door and walk into a living room rather than bathroom on my left and the minibar on my right.
I mean, my own travels. How many of them actually I end up in, independent houses, villas, wherever I can find them, and how much I have started hating those high-rise, straight, single hotel building. No matter how sexy it looks from outside, I'm like, you know what? I'm not getting housed in one of these windows. Can you save me from that, right? So, and that's amazing. That's really a behavioral shift which happened inside me as a consumer. And when it happened, I don't even know. Like, it just happened.
Sure. But that's market drive. That's really given us those opportunities. It wasn't available in the past. You couldn't turn up to someone's house and stay in their house. It was a taboo, as a matter of fact. The same with carpooling. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
All of these experiences that really, I think, as humans, we're trying to find alternatives that are all about practicality and convenience. Nothing else. So Six Senses. Look, honestly, Six Senses for me, like I said, it entailed three silos. One was the focus on of course, providing luxury accommodation. Two was about providing the wellness experience and understanding what does wellness mean. It's really because people look at a spa and they think, okay, it's a 60-minute or 90-minute. I walk in, I have an amazing treatment, I feel good, and then I leave. This is not about that. It's about wellness. Is how do I treat this vehicle? How do I treat my body? What do I eat? How do I sleep? And so forth. And understanding how do we operate? Because even at school, if you really analyze it, we're not taught enough about our systems, how we function as humans. And I think that's changing, that's shifting, and that's the world of wellness for me is very important. And I did, since joining Six Senses, I heavily focused on that to the level of 12 months after joining Six Senses, I moved from Group GM into Group GM Ops, development and holistic wellness. So they kept throwing stuff at me, not because I was bored, it's because I was able to deliver, and the brand was in a situation where it was receiving a lot of inquiries based on the successful opening that we have done.
So how long did you operate that?
With Six Senses, I did 3.5 years in total. And again, in a very formal event, I happened to be sitting next to a gentleman who was leading the human capital for Bell, for Mana International, and we got talking, and a couple of days later, I was given an assignment to join them as an MD for Anantara. And again, for me, Anantara was, so Six Senses is all about the experience, really, from a branding, it's about the experiences that I think very few brands today in the marketplace can match or over deliver. Anantara for me was aspirational on that experience. It wasn't quite there, but what I knew about Anantara was the commercial engine of Anantara. The number crunching was at the heart of everything, and that's really my strength. That's that's what I do naturally well. So I've been able to do the experiences. I've enjoyed that. I've excelled at doing that. I've made a lot of connections in the marketplace. And when that opportunity came, saying, we would like to continue on delivering experiences and take it a notch up, but fundamentally, we would like to still go to owners of hotels and say, we will give you amazing returns. And this is where I thought, there is a...
So Anantara, just to, the assignment was in Thailand or was here?
So Anantara was Middle East, China. Middle East and China was my playground, and this is where the pipeline was really growing. So I was based in Bangkok, but flying around quite extensively. As a matter of fact, those years when I was with Anantara, I was doing up to 42 flights a year. Literally every 7 days, I was on a plane somewhere. for either a meeting with a potential owner for a spa, resort, or an existing operations. And
was it like was it largely like running the properties, or were you also expanding the market, opening new properties? What was the assignment like?
so, look, when you're wearing an MD hat, the boundaries are where you draw them. And the boundaries are depending on the size of the business itself, meaning if a region has 4 or 5 hotels, typically what you do have is VP level of operations. So all of the GMs will report into that, and that VP will report into an MD role. So it depends on the size of the market and the size of signed operations and active operations. It differs. So my role there depends on the size of the region, either a GM directly reporting into me and or a VP reporting into me with the 3 hats of holistic wellness, development, operations. Look, honestly, you can't draw a line and you can't say yes or no without consulting with ownership, of course, without consulting with the leadership.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. You need to make a decision. You need to make a call based on your experience, based on your tuition and knowledge. So for me, Anantara was an incredible experience. But the issue that became very tiring was the travel. And as silly as it sounds, a lot of people look at travel as how can you ever get tired of traveling? When you're traveling on holidays, when you're traveling on business, very different.
Yeah.
When you're traveling single, when you're traveling or leaving your family behind, very different. And you reach a particular milestone in your career, in your life. You reach an age where you say to yourself, I don't need this anymore. I'm good. I've done it. I've ticked all of those boxes multiple times. I'm good now.
Yeah.
And that's when I've decided to join a small company called Rixos. Rixos was again another one of those organizations that is
Rixos here?
Rixos Turkey.
Oh.
Entering this market. So Rixos was I only did 12 months with Rixos, which is the shortest stint in my entire career for multiple reasons. The organization was going through a massive shift from playing in Turkey, operating in Turkey, into global foray of operations. And that shift is demanding, to say the least. A lot of people can adjust. A lot of people find it unreal. A lot of people find it very difficult in order to make that shift. And not speaking Turkish made it a lot harder as well, because that company was centric into Turkey. Like I said, it's operated its entire life cycle in Turkey. Every silo in that business was run and operated by a Turkish national. I'm not suggesting that's wrong at any level. All I'm suggesting is
what made you jump to that? That's a little crazy, right? Because from Bangkok straight to Turkey.
So the position was supposed to be based in the UAE. We were about to sign, as a matter of fact, the Jumeirah Island, the Jumeirah property today on the Palm was a Rixos, was supposed to be a Rixos, and that was going to be the flagship opening. And that, unfortunately, to the brand, that fell through literally 8 months before the opening. And that also was my first assignment, was to open that hotel, and I did recruit the entire team. Everybody was on board, and then there was a bit of a legal battle, which I choose not to go into. And the brand lost that particular hotel. That's 6 months into my tenure in the organization.
Oh, wow.
And I felt a little bit shaky, admittedly, and I felt I'm out of. I don't really belong to that into that sphere. So that's when I thought to myself, I think it's enough to be doing what I'm doing for others. I think it's time for me to start up my own and do a smaller business model where I can be ultimately in charge of whatever I choose to be, rather than what the assignment dictates. And this is when Gates was developed, and
This was which year?
this is end of 2010.
End of 2010. Okay.
Gates was established, registered as an organization. It took us 2 years before we did anything, but again, there was still a lot of assignments that I was still completing. And again, despite the fact that I wasn't wearing a hotel hat or a brand hat, I was still continuing on doing a lot of stuff. So since I've left Six Senses, Ziggy Bay, even though I was flying different flags and wearing different hats, I continued on supporting ownership of that hotel in certain financials, legal representations, advisory role. Why? Because what we do in hotels, you build relationships with individuals that become a lot stronger than any business model. And if that relationship is healthy and strong, then the business becomes secondary, because the trust that you actually shoulder is phenomenal.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, compounding these relationships over decades it's a moat in itself. You can't do that overnight. Like a compounding of a decade-long relationship needs another decade.
Absolutely.
Anybody else has to do it. They have to go through a decade.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, people watch people. People watch careers. People watch success stories, failures, mistakes, and gains. And if you continue on delivering, if you continue on being honest to who you are and what you are, people always behind you. People back you up. I've had people with me for 22 years working, and every time I've jumped ship, they've jumped ship with me. Now, that's not because I pay over what the market does. It's because I know the kids' names, their birthdays. I know challenging times, happy times that they go through, and we don't necessarily talk about it, only if they choose to. But ultimately, it's being human. It's making sure that we connect to them at their level and vice versa. And they have clarity in definition of what the expectation from their roles and so forth. So building relationships for me has been a massive pillar of mine. And I guess nobody to thank other than my family. That's the way that they've raised me. That's the way that we, as a family, we're being structured, is respect. If you dish it up, you get it back. If you don't, you get nothing but what you're dishing up. And that's a very fundamental grain that's been embedded into us as a family from day one. And as rich and meaningful this discussion is, a lot of people will listen to these podcasts and they say, we can relate to those. A lot of young ones will probably relate to them in years to come.
Yeah.
But life is nothing but multitudes of experiences, all assembled together, that define who we are. And for me, that's very important.
I think being present in those experiences is also very important, right? I think in your journey, whenever you are talking about each of the stint, right, what I'm listening is that these specific things that you're appreciating, what that stint taught you, or what you experienced there, or what it gave you, or what you give back to it, right? If that experience is not nuanced, at that level, then it's a waste. Then if, when you're doing jobs or when you're building a career to jump the ship eventually, it doesn't work. Another big one for me is that, what I would like to double click on is what you said, that, there was a steady rise in the career. You did not, jump from being a GM to an MD and then back to something else. And, you had patience. You saw that through, and you spent time in doing justice to the role. You said something which is extremely underrated, but, very deep. You said, I was not in a hurry and I wanted to solidify each level before I go to the next, which is, I think, for anybody watching this, I think that's gold, and it's easier said than done, right? I mean, that takes a lot of hard work, a lot of persistence, perseverance, but it pays off.
Looking at CVs today, a couple of things that really draw my attention is, and this is all based on experience, nothing else, because it takes me literally 2 minutes to say, yes, I'd like to meet, or no, I don't like to meet this person. And that's how powerful a CV is. And the things that I look at is of course, where are you working? What are you doing? But I look at stability.
Yeah.
I look at duration. I look at the growth factor from role into role, and I look at the stability of the individual through their moves in their career. And for me, that's very important. And I say it often and often to my team is we can teach people anything, but we can't teach them manners and we can't teach them gratitude and attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I mean, we have like very, I mean, I totally relate. I can't relate less. And I think, our team here will also, relate to exactly this, right? When we look at people's tenure, I think my problem with people jumping in like every year, I'm like, that's the honeymoon, right? Anybody who has spent 3+ years in a business tells me that no matter what, you were delivering at least minimum of what was required of you for you to sustain in that business, in that position for 3 years. Because year 1 business is expecting bare minimum from you. Year 2, they really want you to up your game. Year 3, you better be delivering consistently. Otherwise, business has no, business having you. And that actually is true for the companies. I actually apply it, for us as vendors, right? When I look at Posist's health, right? I look at it in renewal of the contracts that we had with our customers. Because when we sign up a customer, I mean, we can pass 6 months just by saying sorry. We'll fix it. We'll probably reach an year worth, time, doing some gimmicks. But what happens after that, right? So every time we renew a 3-year contract with a customer, I actually, say that, okay, this is exactly our CV. Nobody will care how many restaurants did we power, how many customers did we work with. But everybody is going to care for how many years, what is the quality of work that we have put in, that we have organizations who are working with us, which are as old as our tenure, for our existence. So I think that tenure in CVs is such a clear glass from persistence and delivery perspective, not the brand, not the designation, not what is written there.
So I call it the 3-year cycle. Year 1 is engineering. You need to engineer what you're about to do. You need to put mechanics into place. You need to design the device. Year 2, apply it. Make sure it's fully engaged, fully applied, and really put to the test. Year 3, you've got to also enjoy what you have designed and applied. So year 1, year 2 is about making sure it's all there, and year 3, enjoy it and leave with a legacy saying, that's what we've done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you come in for 12 months, really by the time the business is learning about you, you're learning about the business, you leave before anyone has any impact on either or. So for me, it's quite important. Duration is quite important, and of course, quality of output rather than just duration. It's not about being dormant on the 3 years, but quality of output. So Gates was born with 3 business silos, based on my latter 8 years of Anantara 6 senses, meaning food and beverage is one major cycle, hotels and resorts is a second, and holistic wellness is a third. And we thought, let's keep this very, very broad, rather than say we're operators, we're investors. Let's just meet for every request that we have and assess if we can service a 5-year cycle. 5 years. So we did. So today, as it stands from 2010 until 2022, 12 years into it, we have all of these silos operational. We have, under these 3 silos, we have invest. So we have our own investment in certain businesses. We have our advisory role, where we are advisors to principals and owners of businesses. We have operations. So again, where we operate someone else's business on all of these fronts. And the beauty of Gates today is that it doesn't talk to one particular market segment. So we have the luxury 6 Senses Ziggy as a ownership of the product. They operate, we asset manage. In the same hand, we have some very entry-level QSR restaurants where we see a vacuum and we try and find a plug for that vacuum. So it's not about us saying we only do luxury. No, we're business guys. I'm in the mindset that if you identify a vacuum and you know that there is a solution that is viable for the 5-year cycle, let's play. Let's find a solution, and we've been able to do that.
So, do you characterize Gates as like a consulting and managed services in hospitality? Like, how do you?
I have a big problem with the word consultants, right? Because again, in our industry, anyone that loses a job, they consult whilst they're looking for a job.
Yeah.
So we're not into consulting. We're into advisory. And before we did advisory, the first 5 years, we did absolutely zero advisory by choice, for the simple reason that I said to everybody, I said, I'm playing with my own money. We're investing. And we've proven for the last 5 years. So we know how it's done. So we're not going to play with your money. We're not advising or consulting at your expense. No, we're doing what we do, and we can mirror that in your business with your money. So advisory. So today, Gates is an organization that is specializing in hospitality services with other investment. If we see a vacuum in that particular marketplace and sustainable marketplace from political safety and accessibility to ourselves. The same with the holistic wellness advisory role. We're doing a lot of those. And again, on the advisory, people say, well, what is that exactly? So we do a lot of work with a lot of spa companies, large spa companies, that we do all of their policies and procedures, all of their P's and P's. We do all of their SOPs, standard operating procedures. We do a lot of recruitment. We do a lot of brand representation. So you have a brand, you come to me saying, I'd like to be in this marketplace if anyone's looking for an operator. So we do that kind of matchmaking between ownership and brands as well. So that's what we do on the advisory role. And again, we try and do a minimum period of 3 years where we do the engineering, applying, and enjoyment of cycle. So again, we're in for the long term. We're not in and out. That's not the intent.
That makes sense. And you're operating your own restaurants.
And we have our own investment. Like I said, resort, of course, Six Senses Ziggy asset owned. Restaurants, asset owned, operates. So this is where you sit in front of third-party individuals and say, we do this for a living. We do it with our own money. So luckily, again, the way that we're looking at the market recently, in recent years, today, Gates Hospitality in this market, I don't think there is any hospitality meetings that take place without Gates being one of the brands or one of the players in the market that is referenced, which for me, I made the comment about Bill, exactly the same what I'm trying to do. This is my life cycle. This is not inheritance. This is not a brand that I bought that I'm trying to have continuity. This is a brand that I have brought to life, nurtured, and today it is what it is. We have an agreement with our colleagues in Ascot Hotels now. Any new build, we will do their F&B for them and their spas.
Wow.
So we've signed Nigeria recently. So we're entering that African market with 4 restaurants and a spa. And any new pipeline.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
No, that's great. In fact, I want to there are two things that I really want to know from you. I think I'll pick the first one, the Michelin experience, right? So for you got one of your restaurants in Michelin Guide. And what I know is that there is a full process around Michelin. There are Michelin inspectors, and you go through all the entire drill. How was that like? What is that experience? And was this the first one? Like what? I mean, I just want to know what went behind that. Yeah. So how was what's the Michelin guide experience like? Because what I know is it sounds really challenging for the right reasons, because, there are Michelin inspectors who have this global perspective on cuisines, on ingredients, on cooking processes, your chefs, your brand, everything has to speak and have, like, a lot of things have to come together right for a Michelin inspector to, kind of give you, a thumbs up, be like, and can you also demystify the bibs and the stars and what is your experience like? What is your and your team's experience like? Just, spill.
Before I answer your question, I think what I'd like to highlight is this achievement. The Michelin is a success story for the city. I think it's very important to highlight, because Michelin has been very selective which cities they enter and how they enter, and the presence, they contribute towards success of any business, any institution, any restaurant, whatever you want to call it. So first and foremost, I think this is an amazing experience for Dubai as a city. That it's a huge milestone, because what it tells me as an individual, as a business owner, as a business a leader, if I may, that Dubai is on the international radar today. So it's no longer an up-and-coming city. It's a city that is making waves. It's a city that's trying to attract attention. It's a city that's making a change in everyone's life. It's an aspirational city. And for me, that's already a success story. And that takes time. We've been after Michelin for years. We've been wondering how and when, and it's here. So it's a great success story for the city. The cycle that you go through in order to achieve a BIB or a 1, 2, 3 is incredible. Because again, the nature of Michelin has always been obscure by design, which I respect. It's their business. It's their business model. And the way they measure, the way they assess any business is entirely secretive. But again, I think what I keep saying to my guys, we don't do it for Michelin, we do it for ourselves. And if Michelin approves what we're doing based on their standards and our standards, then we're winners. If not, we're still winners in our own ways. But what we're getting from them is that little acknowledgement, I shouldn't say little, big acknowledgement of their recognition of what we're doing. So it's a cycle that is very much, it's disturbing at very fundamental levels. It's disturbing for many people. It's also very challenging for a lot of chefs, because if we don't qualify, I think the mental implications that it could have on a business is quite drastic.
Yeah, so that means like the entire experience is intense.
Very much so. Very much so. It's intense, it's rewarding, and the business does change when you pick up one of those acknowledgements, be it a BIB or be it a star. And for us, the success at Folly has been always about the food is hero. Whatever we do is food-centric. Unlike other venues in the UAE where they talk about experience, food, beverage. Now we talk about food as a hero, and then everything else has to be around the hero. And hence, when we are recognized, whether it be the only independent outside of a hotel venue as well, which I like to highlight,
wow,
is a massive reward for the team. And frankly, not getting a star itself, just getting a BIB for us, it's already a massive achievement for the team.
No, absolutely. I think, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, because you're still going through the same process, like the same drill.
Back to a point you made earlier, it's not about just getting 3 stars at once. It's the process. And I said to the guys, let's enjoy the process. Let's go through the BIB. Let's go through the 1 star. Let's go through the 2. Let's go through the process. And the more we get involved, the more that industry platform matures, the more we understand. And whether we choose to donate more of their wish list or contribute or align ourselves, it's up to us. But as a business, we're grateful, and I think it makes a lot of difference to the business. And I think what's very important, like I said, it's about putting the city on the map. And this year, we've seen 50 Best entering the marketplace. We've seen Galt and Milo entering the marketplace, and Michelin. And that for me is bravo Dubai, bravo UAE as a city, as a country. In a very short span of time, we've managed to be saying to the big boys who have been operating for years and years, make space for us. We are on the same table as you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's incredible. I think my own ignorance was so much that when last year I got to know that Michelin is coming to Dubai, I was like, oh, they weren't there already. And I never, because so many Michelin star restaurants, had their, outlets opened here over the years, pop-ups, chefs being, attracted to this market. I never knew, or I never felt that, Michelin's guide wasn't there. So absolutely incredible. I mean, in fact, honestly, I felt the gravity of that even more then. I was like, oh, wow. Like, it's coming to Dubai now. Right? While in my head, it's
Look, again, for us as owners of businesses, now that really what it does, it's pushing the envelope to the next level. So the entire city, the entire country benefits from these platforms because everybody has an interest. Everybody's trying to up the ante on delivery, on the experience, sustainable, whatever it takes in order to say, we're trying. And that, I think, shouldn't be underestimated in any marketplace based on expectation and the delivery. I think it will also give the kitchen life, if I may, a little bit more rewards for those who win. For those who are aspiring, it gives them more hope in order to push harder. So I think for the industry, it's nothing short of a success story.
So when you just from the process and the change in in a business, I think especially with private businesses, businesses which are smaller outfits as organizations or their legacy. When you signed up to be evaluated, or when you took that challenge up.
I have to interrupt you. You don't get to sign up. You go through the process of 5 visits without even recognizing that you're being measured.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to ask. That what's the process? Blind. Oh, so you mean it's totally anonymous?
Totally blind approach. We don't know who they were, when they came, when they left, what they ate. And for me,
it's not like Linguini, losing it in Ratatouille.
Definitely not. And this, for me, is what makes it what it is.
Wow,
it's as powerful as that.
So, sorry, just excuse my naivety here. So what is it like? They tell you that okay, you're being evaluated because we did these 5 visits and you made it to, let's say, the next level of evaluation, or you are saying the entire process is blind?
So when they finish their cycle of assessment, as they call it, you are being invited to an event where you are told where you are in their cycle of assessment. So you have absolutely no input. You have inspectors who come into your business and do what they do best in their own time frame, in their own discretion, without your knowledge. Now, of course, some market businesses who have been exposed to the cycle, like anything else, you start being able and identifying the questions that are asked, the cycle that they go through. But we haven't had that in this market. So very few people in this market have seen it elsewhere in the world where they've related to it. But not knowing that Michelin was coming to the city.
And what basis are they making the first list for assessment? Example, Dubai is full of great restaurants and, new ones keep coming every day. There are celebrity chefs who, want to have something here in this market. Now, let's say there are 500 restaurants. So what's that? Is Michelin, they're choosing those 100, 200, 500 as well themselves? Or is there a level, you had an expectation that, okay, probably I may be evaluated?
I started by saying that they are an obscure organization, right? And this is exactly how they approach it. So they have inspectors living in the country. They have inspectors who are coming in and out of the country. And their selection criteria is not known to anybody. But of course, it's if you take market analysis, right? If you have people based in the market, you have a very good idea on performance, on continuity, on who's eligible to be shortlisted, not shortlisted, who should be measured, and who should be paid a visit in order to make sure that they are qualifying or not qualifying. So a lot of it is about market understanding, market maturity, and playing in the marketplace. And a lot of it is about sustainability from performance. So you don't just open 12 months later, you have a Michelin. It doesn't work that way.
So you get to know when you get invited to that event.
Well, you get to know that you're invited. You don't know if you've just been visited but maybe didn't qualify, but you're still invited because they want you to see. But not every invitee is a winner.
Got it, right. But when you get invited, that's exactly when you know that you qualified at least
You've
some
had an
level,
inspection.
right?
Yes,
yeah,
you've had an
inspection
inspection.
happened, right?
Yes.
And then what happens there in the event? Like what's the process from there? Like do they interview the chefs, your team? Like what's happening there?
So there are one-on-ones, but it's a public announcement. And in the case of Dubai, obviously DET is supporting the event, which I think is extremely intelligent in order to put the whole economy, the whole sector on the map. Was also introducing, along with the Michelin representatives, the winners and announcing them and calling them up on stage for a moment of media attention and a moment of recognition, and awarding them with the plaque or the certificate that they have. And look, honestly, it's one of those, and I think year one or the entry to any market is always very. People don't know what to expect, right? Unless you've been operating in other markets where you've gone through the entire process and understand the rewards, the tension, the successes, the nightmares that come with such a platform, you don't know what to expect. So I think this year has been extremely well handled. The fact that it's powered by DET is very assuring for many. And last but not least, I think the selection process today, if you see all of the winners, and if you are in the industry, if you are a consumer, and if you are a diner, you see the selected list and you say, yeah, I agree. And that for me is an endorsement.
Mm-hmm. I think this should, do you think that like I don't know if an aspiring Michelin guide or star restaurateur, but even like a restaurateur who's aspiring to like do a great restaurant, is there anything that you believe, like which you learned from this exercise experience, that they should do, in their business in general? They should make changes in their business, in structure, in processes, in ingredient quality, or anything, like one or two things that they should do, which should ideally lead them to an automagic path that one day they get an invitation?
I love the question. You're not going to like my answer, but anybody that enters into any industry to win an award shouldn't enter. You should enter a business for knowing your value, for knowing your quality, for knowing your authenticity, and make sure that you have solutions to enter that business. And that's when you will gain rewards and you will pick up all these recognitions. But if you enter a business to become a celebrity, you might as well go to Hollywood.
That's brutal and true. That's that's perfect. And so that brings me to my another something that I really want to know. You started DRG, like you laid the foundation of that, and I think I saw that happening like through the pandemic. We engaged first time in early 20, when at the onset of pandemic, and I saw how different appointments happened at DRG, how you guys structured, got the right kind of representation from probably like all directions, so from my like a distant view, but like having at least some, from our vantage point, we could clearly see that, okay, this is great. Like the way representation is being, designed from literally all sides of the industry, from vendors to restaurateurs to, that was superb. And then it becomes UAERG, it becomes a federal entity. And that also probably brings us to yours, the politics side of the things. What happened here?
What happened? A lot of things have happened. And again, I think this is another success story for the UAE. It's not about us. It's about the country's vision and how we play a role in delivering that vision. We're merely fulfilling our roles in that big frame of vision. DRG was born in order to support an industry that is a main economy driver. Our employment is a double-digit percentage. Great contributor to the economy. Positioning the city now, we're talking about Michelin 2 minutes ago and how important that sector is. So this DRG was born through the Chamber of Commerce in Dubai to become the advocate voice of the industry.
Yeah.
To become representing the industry at every level of the industry, be it a fine dining, be it a QSR, be it a little kiosk, but it's making sure that everyone's voice is heard for the benefit of the industry, in alignment with the UAE vision, Dubai vision at the time of where we're going. So our chairman, Mubarak bin Fahd, has really been able to identify every board member who adds their weight into the equation. It's like the puzzle, and we all come from similar walks of life, yet different responsibilities, different backgrounds. I bring the hotel background with my experience. I bring the investment with my experience. So we all 10 of us have their own weight that they add to the equation. And with Mubarak at the helm, we've been very able to work in a way that is fast yet efficient, non-profit yet contributing, giving back, and last but not least, making sure that we bring the industry in a way that it's collaborating rather than competing. And I think, again, through efforts as such, other Emirates have said, okay, look, we have similar needs in our own Emirates, so why is this not shared across every other Emirate?
Why is it only Dubai Restaurant Group?
That's right. So early in the year, or a couple of months ago, again, we've become on a federal level there. And again, I hope you get the opportunity to speak to Mubarak, our chairman, who will tell you a lot more about.
I would love to.
His contribution on this, which was really very powerful in order to make it happen. And I see it moving forward. I see it as a unity. I see it as also a learning from city to city. I see it as maturity. And last but not least, I see it as a main voice of the industry in decision-making processes, making sure that we're neutral, and equally as important, representing every silo of the industry due to the contribution that it does to the economy overall.
I mean, I don't know if this is something that you would like to answer in the same tune or tone or not. I don't know if the question will land exactly the way intended. But generally, restaurant groups, like such associations, such bodies, they stay outside the government and they, do lobbying, for the greater good or for, interests of at least, a large percentage, the critical mass. But they're generally lobbying against, let's say, or I would not really say against, but you more often than you would appreciate, you find yourself at the loggerheads with the authority, with the government, with at least some policy that you want to change or you want to influence. When you actually join, the forces with the authorities or with the, how do you still carry the greater good? Like, how do you still do that? And I'm not saying that government is, against any business, but at times, policies and regulations that come into play where any government in any country, when they intervene, it may not, there is a chance that something that is good for consumers may not be good for the businesses and vice versa. So how does it work? Like those dynamics, are you?
Yeah, good question. And again, this is my humble opinion. This is my own read on the matter. And I think this is the intelligence of the leadership. It's rather than forming unions, let's really get in here and jump in and become a support system, define that playground for the operators in order to support the economy. And again, this is about leadership, authorities working with investors, unlike any other parts of the world where you have the unions and authorities, right? This is going exactly the other way, which is very clever if you ask me, because it's listening to the industry and trying to find solutions to make investment, to make operations prosper and grow in line with the country's vision. So for me, it's one step ahead of every other country where it's unity It's about advocacy. It's about making sure the support is in place. That doesn't mean that everything is going to be approved. This is a free, open economy as well at the end of the day. So we need to make sure we balance the equation. But our role in all of this is to make sure that we vet out all the positives, make sure these are bundled in a way that makes perfect sense for the economy, continuity, sustainability, business owners. Because ultimately, we want these business owners to succeed. We want them to be here. We want them to invest here. We want them to stay. So it's in everyone's interest for them to be well nurtured, looked after in a well-defined manner.
But does it, on the other side, does it also constrain your voice, like in general as a body? Because, when you are an independent, like as DRG, right, Naeem can have, or any of the board member can have, like, an opinion, and they can talk about that in the media, or they can just say something, not irresponsible, but let's say like their opinion, which they believe in, at least. And everybody will take it with a pinch of salt because, that is probably one man's or one body's or 10 people's opinion. Now, when you become like a federal entity, does it also kind of constrain, what goes out has to be well thought and owned, and you can't just have opinions out? Is that
I'm going to answer your question in an indirect way, but I'm going to go back to the way the board has been formed. It's been formed based on experience. It's been formed based on maturity, on involvement, and all of us on the board have equity in entities of FNB. So we get impacted by those decisions. So it's not about lip service. We are part of the consumer, yet we are part of the decision-making process. So in a way, it's been very cleverly done that whatever we say, we will feel as well. So it's not lip service. So what we say makes sense to the business, makes sense to our colleagues, because again, we are investors, operators, and equally as immersed in the business cycle as our membership.
No, but that's phenomenal. No, I agree with you. I'm just, I think I have not seen, and we work with a lot of, we work directly in a lot of countries, and we, see a lot of associations, and more often than, we don't really see most of the associations, being able to do service more than lobbying or, kind of going against a certain policy or trying to, change that in their favor. Not for the good, not for the bad reasons.
Sure.
That's how the business is, right? But we have not seen such endorsement of a body. So I think that speaks, volumes, about what you guys have created. And kudos to you. I think.
Thank you.
Trailblazing there. We would love to jump to, some other aspects of life. We would like to know, are you into reading books, podcasts? What do you do to nurture yourself? And I think, as a leader, when you're running your own business, everybody is looking up to you. Your business's failure, success. Success, a lot of people will get credit. Failure is completely yours. So as a leader, you need to, continuously make sure that you have a process to nurture yourself, learn, get exposed, think. What are your tools to do that?
I think leadership is having the ability to push oneself, because you don't have a boss. Yeah. I don't have someone who's going to say, where were you at 9 o'clock? What did you do today? You've got to do that on your own. In order to measure your own success, you've got to drive yourself and push yourself. I sit on 7 other boards other than UAERG. And for me, these are all enriching experiences. For the simple fact that every board members, right? Everybody has a role in life and everybody adds value. So our general discussions, our general chatters or natters or whatever you want to call them, add value because there's a learning. I sit on the board of Australian Business Council. So again, I still have connectivity to my native land. So I know what's happening on that front. I'll sit on the board of a lifestyle company that actually sells experiences. So again, and these are all enriching experiences to the soul. Some of them are more defining. Some are more at leisure. But I think for us, it's also about finding the balance. It's finding what makes me tick. So the balance doesn't have to be 50-50 or 80-20. The balance is about, I need to have something that is measurable, something that's enjoyable, something that is fulfilling, and so forth. And that's the balance for me. I love reading, and I'm reading an amazing book at the moment. All right, and it's called Never Eat Alone. The author is Keith Ferrazzi. Right, and I'm reading the book the second time, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Right, the second time. Not because I didn't understand it the first time. It's because I had to make that point clear. It's actually a very simple book, and but the reason that I'm reading it again is in every chapter, and this is very very true to my character. In every chapter, there are more than 1 or 2 points that are actually talking about me as an individual. And that, for me, is very fulfilling because it's reinvigorating a certain aspect of what I do well. And this book is about, really, it's a feel-good book. It's not an educational book, with all due respect to my colleague Keith, right? It's one of those feel-good books, but I think feeling good is important because, again, it's lonely at the top.
Oh, just to clarify, this book is talking about you as you, or you are saying that you are identifying with
I'm identifying.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah.
Not me. He doesn't know me from a bar.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he clarified that. But it's important that we are looking at stuff that give us that feel-good vibe. Because at the end of the day, as you rightly mentioned, when we walk into our hotels, our businesses, how we do things and what we do. And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So that's one of the books. The second book,
before you go to the second, I think when was the first time you read that book, and like how long after you are reading it the second, or is it back to back?
It's literally I've started reading it the minute that I finished the last chapter.
Oh, back to back. Wow. Wow.
I made the mistake. I typically have a marker when I'm reading a book. But the truth is I've promised this book to somebody, and I didn't want to mark it. So now I'm having to go through again rather than.
So you're the marker kinds. Huh? I know. I don't have a better word for this. I hate it. when somebody is actually coloring the book, I'm like, oh man, don't do that. But my wife.
Why is that?
I don't know. My wife is the marker one, right? So she's the one who will. Who will actually have a pen, pencil, even a highlighter, and she'll make the book her own. And I, for some reason, I feel that books are, I want to keep them exactly that way. I'm not even giving it away. I'm not trying to do anything else with that, right? But I want to keep it, I don't know, mentally, I don't want to color it.
I see value in the books to be enjoyed. And for me to be able to pick up a book on my way to meeting you today, right? I would have picked up that book if it had few things highlighted and just read the highlighted stuff because it would have made me feel good.
Yep.
Where did we leave it?
Yeah. So the you're talking about the second book.
There are 3 books.
Yeah.
I'm not into podcasts. Before I forget, I enjoy reading because I can control my mind rather than being controlled listening. Second book is by an author lady who comes from my hometown, actually Adelaide, and she is a lady by the name of Nan Whitcomb, and she writes poetry principally. Right now, you may think poetry is something of the past and it's dead, but for me, poetry is important.
Me too. So
good. So she writes stories or poems about life. Very deep and meaningful. So it's not a book where you read the beginning to the end. It's every now and then you pick it, you read a poem, and it takes me a week to dwell over it, dissect it, and understand what it is. She goes by the name of The Thoughts of Nanushka. That's her business label, so to speak.
Thoughts of Nanushka.
Nanushka, yeah, Thoughts of Nanushka. And I have actually managed to buy most of her books. And extremely deep and meaningful. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that because poems, maybe a way of, because my wife, she's also my co-founder in my business. She's the one who runs the revenue, at Possessed, and she writes poetry. and her poetry is actually that. These are like small.
Do yourself a favor, buy her a book. If
100%.
she enjoys that kind of reading, that kind of
she writes actually, quite dense, deep, short, poetry.
Good.
And
so Nan Whitcomb is the lady's name. The Thoughts of Nanushka, and very amazing books. Very hardcover. They're small, so they're easy to carry. For me, it's important when I'm traveling that.
I'm getting one and gifting her for sure.
There you go. And then the third one that I'm reading, and that's quite interesting. It's principally a biography of Muhammad Al-Fayed. So I'm reading his life story. Now, you may ask me, why do I read biographies, or why do I read personal lives, right? I think a person like Al-Fayed has had an incredibly colorful life. Colorful is not positive, by the way, nor negative. Let me just make that clear. But it's incredible.
Eventful?
Very. Very eventful. And it's a monster book. It's written without his approval, so I'd like to think a lot of it is factual, but it's also very, very awakening to learn the behaviors and the output of. It's very philosophical, if I may, because he's cheated a lot of people in his life to be where he is today. And with all of his doings, again, I'm basing everything on the book rather than my personal experiences here. His main objective is to obtain a British nationality, which he hasn't been able to do, despite the fact that he's been at one of the top business guys around the globe, the richest business guys around the world. Obviously, lost his son to a very tragic story as well, and his main objective still is that kind of nationality, because he's been denied that request on multiple occasions, and it's quite interesting how he keeps pursuing that objective. Buying Harrods was one of his ways in, he thought, and that didn't work. But so look, why do I read these kind of books? For me, like I said, the business one is motivational. It's my own way of saying to myself, am I pushing myself sufficiently? Because it's very easy to go flat. Second one, it's what I like. I admire those stories, and it's easy work. It's not hard work. It's a paragraph of poetry that you read that stays with you for 2 weeks, and you keep trying and digest all of that. And the third one, it's fascinating. Someone's life and what they've gone through. I mean, the gentleman travels with a kilo of lemons every time, because he would wash his hands with lemons after touching anything and anyone.
Oh, it's like a germaphobe who also has
100%. So it makes you you learn a lot by reading these books. And can I do anything with that information? No. But can I learn about behavioral patterns and psyches? Absolutely.
One thing, and I mean, as somebody leading the organization, and I also find myself continuously questioning this, is that, we all, running our own business, we have gained this power that we can choose who to work with. Mostly 80% of our times, right? Colleagues, partners, even customers, in case you have the privilege, or you exercise the privilege. But I think that also creates an echo chamber, right? Because we start liking people who also have our worldview. While you continuously need that challenge or some contrarian view, not from random people, like from people who you also respect, right? So that you can carry that contrarian view in your head and you can keep mulling over it and thinking that, okay, what did this guy just say? I disagree with it, but can I look at it again? How do you keep some contrarian, how do you keep challenging if you do?
I'm not sure if I keep them or they keep me. Let's be honest. It's life throws a lot of things at you. And I think the success is, how do you deal with what's being thrown at you. No matter how high you are, or you don't control everything that happens, particularly when you have a public business. Public business is you have people, and when you have people, they have their opinions. When they have their opinions, you need to make sure they are aligned with your business opinions in order to execute a business model. But that's not always the case, because ultimately, 80% of the people have their own agendas. They have their own path that they'd like to nurture, pursue, and get to at the end of the day. And a lot of the times, that's not aligned with the business objectives. So rather than me keeping them, it's them keeping me. It's for me, what's important is for me to identify what's the gain, what's the contribution of their efforts into my business.
No, I think my question is a little different. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is, as a leader, how do you create a sounding board for yourself, and not board in like the official terms? But I'm saying, like, how do you keep yourself challenged on the notions, which also, have been built over years with your experiences, right? Last 10 years, let's say you had certain experiences and you created like certain rules and principles and you go by them, right? You also add your gut feel to that. But then there are times when you really need to reset some of them and say, hey, you know what? I feel this way, but let me take a shot, right? What are those, can you cite like some story, some anecdote?
So 2 years of politics haven't gone to waste, right? I still have a very strong following. I watch BBC 2 hours every day, just about. In the morning, the minute that I wake up, my BBC is on, not because I believe what they say, it's because I'd like to know what's happening around the globe, and then I'll form an opinion. If you take, and again, I often remind myself not to talk about politics and religion, but in order to answer your question, I'm afraid I have to. If you look around the globe, what's happening today, if you take the leadership of the UK, if you take the leadership of the US, if you take the leadership of Palestine, if you take the leadership of Australia, right? I think the world's in a very, very dark place today. And who's going to pay the price? We as individuals will have to face all of those consequences. The last 24 hours, what's happening in Palestine, Israel, it's not normal. The same thing is happening in Ukraine and Russia, but the coverage is not balanced. And for me, I'm often asking myself, if I was in those situations, if I was to have completed that third year and got myself into a government gig, a role into politics, how would I be representing those incidents, those actions, and what is my contribution to the world? And I think, sadly, I am disagreeing with a lot that's happening around me, and it's making me stronger. It's making my opinion stronger. However, my voice is not out there by choice. So I feed on what's happening around me on the world by having intelligence that I form in my own way, and challenge the decisions that governments are making, individuals are making, that are impacting populations for years to come.
So that's so politics is also, while nurturing, your own.
Look, I'm not sure if the headline is politics, but their actions impact everybody. So if we don't have a say, look what's happening in Sri Lanka today. Really phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it's unjust at every level.
Yeah, and in 2022.
In 21st century, with democracy ruling, with the world. Look at the shooting at schools in the US. It's not normal.
Yeah.
These actions should be confronted to the authorities. But sadly, there aren't enough voices out there, united voices, because all that the leadership is worried about is votes, voices, commercialism, nothing else. They're worrying about 2 years. They're not worried about life. And for me, that's very, very concerning. So I'm not sure if it's politics. I think it's existence. And how do we defend our existence for the better, humane world?
Naeem, I want to make an observation, right? Can I?
Go right ahead.
I think, speaking to you, I can continuously see that the plane, the orbit in which Naeem is continuously watching the world, thinking, it's each time it's a zoomed out broad view, and then zoom in with context, and then zoom out, again. And, I see that's phenomenal, right? I think I'm sure your leadership style, this may reflect in that. But does it help you think much longer term? Like, does it help you play a 10-year game instead of a 1-year game, even in a business like restaurants, hospitality, wellness, etc., where the life of the asset, is 3 years before you kind of rejig it, do something about it, market is changing, etc. Does this help you do a 10-year or 10-year plus sort of view? Or how does this side of you or your personality reflect in your business, which is very instantaneous in its character?
Yeah, look, I think if you can identify that the business is very rapidly changing, you're already on a winning track. As long as you make sure that the defining mechanism of a business is clear, and you know that in 5 years, as a person, as an organization, right, and I can't separate myself from Gates, right, that's where we endeavor on being. Now, how do we execute our style needs to be relevant to the market. Now, the market is moving rapidly that I can't plan like I used to. So our agility, our nimble approach is what makes us strong. I did mention earlier, I attend every meeting without having an agenda, because I think I'll define the agenda once we finish the meeting. Once I have sufficient intelligence about the topic, about the endeavor, about the scope, I'll define the calendar, whether we need a calendar or not. So my ability to view life long term is very strong. I know exactly where I'd like to be in 5 years, 10 years as a human. But as a business, I don't even have that endeavor to define it because I can't control it.
Beautiful.
My control over it is to be agile, nimble, and to make sure I'm relevant to that time. That's it.
Awesome. Quick one. What are your favorite restaurants? 1, 2, or 3?
Look, my favorite restaurants, I often get asked the question, and I always refuse to answer the question, because restaurants for me shouldn't be about what are they. It's what is the purpose of that meal period. Is if I'm going with my wife, there's a need. If I'm going with my colleagues, there's a space and a time.
No. So I think I'm not asking you to actually name those restaurants as a star for them. Let's say you're going out with family. What's a restaurant that you love, like you love going? Purely your personal opinion.
Look, again, family is a bit tricky. You've hit me with a tricky one, because it's about pleasing the family rather than eating, if you know what I'm saying. So making sure that the family is content, and then we okay. My girls are 15 and 17, so they're going through an age now where dining for the 17-year-old is becoming very important. 15 it's a meal, so it's about making sure, for me, it's a table that gets us together as a family unit where we can talk about anything and everything. Reform for me as a venue, as a brand, has always done that, because there's multiple facets in that business that talks to anybody. So the kids can go out if they choose to. The kids can be engaged watching TV if they choose to. They could be engaging in our discussion if they want to. And it's that multi-facets of a business where you're getting good food in a vibrant environment, pleasing everybody around the table.
Nice. Awesome. And one, I don't know, peer, colleague, or maybe somebody in the world that you admire in the business of hospitality. I'm not talking about like somebody who's absolutely, I'm not talking about the legends. I'm talking about the legends in making, who you identify and who you feel that, you feel inspired when you see them, meet them, talk to them, or see their work in case you don't have the opportunity to meet them.
There are multiple. I was born 3 weeks after my father passed away.
Oh.
So never really had a father figure in the house, and I had 3 sisters, older of course, and so mom, 3 girls, myself. And my uncle, one of my uncles, was my model, if I may, and who happens to be in hospitality as well. And until this very stage, until this very moment, he's still a figure that I would often ask myself, what would Richard have done in this situation? Or how would he have answered this question or tackled this?
Is he the one whose restaurants you were working in?
Yes. And look, he was extremely tough. He was extremely disciplined as an individual, fair yet disciplined, and I think it made me the way I am today. It's about having that balance of discipline and objectives in one kind of limelight. So he's one. In my career as well, in Hilton, I was a mentor of mine is a gentleman by the name of Kees Hartzacker, who was my GM early in the years. Again, extremely disciplined, but extremely determined as well. And I admired the fact that he knew where he wanted the business to go and who played what role in the business. And equally as important, my learning from him is he nurtured individuals, and I was one of them, that stood out from the crowd. So these guys are always in my life, as in what would they do, how would they react, and what would they say.
Awesome name. I think that was a superb chat, and I am actually going out from this conversation enriched, and a lot of respect, for you, and a lot of gratitude for this conversation.
Thank you.
All the best for Gates. Congratulations again for the Michelin Guide, for both, your restaurant as well as for Dubai, for UAE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, on a closing note, I've omitted from saying one very important objective in my life and my business, right? And these are the 4 business pillars, right? So we have innovate, enrich, engage, belong. These are the 4 things that if you work with Naeem, you will hear them endlessly. And if you really think about these 4 pillars, right? We don't talk about commercials. We don't talk about anything to do other than experiential experiences, human-led enrichment, innovation leading from the front. And for me, these are extremely important and decisive in every business decision that we make, in every life decision that I make. Why? Because they control the business outcome. Commercials will come if you have those things. And I think to allude to a question that you've raised earlier, it's about making sure you define yourself, you define your business parameters extremely well so you can service those requirements. And these 4 pillars for me are the foundations of everything we do and everything we embark upon in order to make sure that we have clarity, relevance, continuity, and giving back.
So innovate, enrich, engage, belong. Perfect. And that actually ties back into your, the year 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, it's a cycle. There's a cycle.
Perfect.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was a great chat.
Thank you very much.